I think we have a call. Pretty sure. I got contacted by this guy on Twitter. He wanted to come on and have a conversation about this. He has his own YouTube program. Tim, is this you?
Yeah, that's me. How you doing, Sam?
Hey, Tim. This is Tim Black. Tim, you have a YouTube program at the Tim Black Show. What's the URL?
Yeah, it's the Tim Black Show.
What's the URL for that?
You go to TimBlackTV.com and it'll point you to everywhere I am: Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, iTunes, Stitcher, everywhere.
Okay. And you reached out to me on Twitter, said that we've got to have a conversation about the infighting on the left.
Absolutely, brother. You know, it's getting to epic proportions. It seems like people who have like small differences in, you know, like general policy on the left are like resorting to like beating each other up endlessly. And instead of focusing, I think we're going to focus on media, for instance, independent media. Why aren't we looking at these corporate hacks, man? Why aren't we going after, you know, the Rachel Maddows, the people that Trump, you know, who sound the horns for war and glamorize it? You know, the people that report these narratives that they just go down to you know, repeatedly to viewers that we all share, who tune into the mainstream media, corporate media, you know, who watch CNN and they think that's reality, you know, that the world wants to hear about Russia all the time. Like the world, like that's what's most important to Americans. So I think there's a lot of fire we have. We should have it for corporate media, and it seems like it's being focused on one another in independent media.
All right. So you said you said a lot of things there in that, and so you're and let me just be clear. So you're saying that because on Twitter you said this is in between the left, between the progressives and the liberals. What did you mean by that?
Absolutely.
Like what's a liberal and what's a progressive, and what are you referencing? Are you talking about the grief I give Jimmy Dore? Is that what you're talking about?
Well, yeah, not just that, but yeah, I mean that's part of it, but I wouldn't say that's everything. You know, I've had issues with Jordan Sheridan of TYT, you know, so but you know, we put it away though. Like, you know.
Well, that's fine.
But
that's
not specifically.
I'm trying to figure out I'm trying to figure out what you're saying, because I'm not sure exactly what it is that we're supposed to be fighting against, where it would make sense for me, from my perspective, to spend time on, you know, I mean, I don't spend time really criticizing any specific media people. It's more about when specific moments come up. But I don't know that there's really much I would have a problem with on policy with, let's say, Rachel Maddow. Now, I suppose, I mean, I think broadly speaking, I am to the left of her, although I'm not 100% sure about that. But and I've had an issue with, you know, MSNBC. There's a lot of people who go on there, it seems to me, who are pretty excited at the prospect of bombing Syria. And
right.
But I mean, outside of that, and certainly I've been on MSNBC arguing against that with those people. But what specifically, like, tease this out for me. Liberals versus progressives. What's the difference between a liberal and a progressive? I mean, I have a sense of what's the difference between a liberal and, let's say, a socialist or a radical, but what's the difference between a liberal and a progressive?
A radical. Well, to me, radicals, for instance, are just people who want to change the status quo. And hopefully, you know, there are a lot of those people out there who don't like the direction the country's going. But the difference between progressives and liberals, in my opinion, because it's all relative to each individual, I'd say liberals are like Sam Seder. They fall in line with Rachel Maddow, who think this Russia narrative, the impeached Donald Trump narrative, is something that's going to actually help us, and it's doing nothing but raise the money for the Democratic Party. So progressives, in my opinion, are people who want to focus on the issues like ending interventionist wars, ending fracking, and having no tolerance for candidates or media that support the destruction of our environment. Progressives stood up in Standing Rock to try to stop an oil pipeline. The progressives talk about Flint. They talk about water. They talk about police incarceration. They talk about police violence. They talk about Tamir Rice. They talk about John Crawford. They talk about Terrence Crutcher. That's what progressives do. What liberals do is they talk about surface issues that don't directly impact Americans, average Americans. I don't think, like most Americans, do not give a flying filth about what's going on with MSNBC talking about Trump. So I think that's the line. Like, do you swallow the mainstream media narratives, or do we focus on real issues that matter to people? And yeah, your thing with Jimmy back and forth. I mean, that's
all right. Well, hold on, Tim. Let me just before we get into the Jimmy thing. So your argument is, I mean, first of all, I don't think that there's going to be impeachment of Trump.
Well, why aren't you hitting these bastards that are saying it daily, like 24/7?
Well, because frankly, I think it's been relatively effective with achieving my agenda, which is to not have healthcare destroyed, to not have, the Dakota Access Pipeline, that's gone now, right? I mean, more or less because of the Trump administration. But all of the things that you talked about, wait, hold on, let me just say this now. All the things you've talked about are things that we talk about on this program significantly. And I'm looking at and on top of which, I would say, and frankly, I don't care what you call me. It doesn't matter to me. It's completely irrelevant. But it's curious to me because you see some type of major split here and you want to say that Rachel Maddow, has she been doing a lot of Russia stuff? Yes. Have we commented on that? Yes. We have joked about it. I do think that the Russia stuff is really, to a large extent, to be honest with you, I think it's a case of people basically yelling fire in front of their house so that the cops and the fire department shows up and they find out, oh, there's a burglar inside. But aside from that, I look at like the last whatever it is. I mean, you don't do all of your show on YouTube, right? Do you do some of it on audio? I'm not totally familiar with it, but.
Oh yeah, well, different. I also go on location. I was at the Anti-War Coalition Convention in Richmond.
No, but I'm asking
over the weekend. Before that, I went to the People's Summit.
Do I get a fair assessment of your content from looking at your YouTube uploads?
Oh, well, yeah, pretty much. Pretty much. I mean, I do a lot of content.
I'm looking at this, and I don't see the words in the past 4 weeks. I don't see the words healthcare. Am I missing it?
This black hole represents the feeling you get when you don't know how to spend your marketing budget.
Hello?
You don't see the term healthcare.
I don't see the word healthcare. Now, I see Kim.com and Seth Rich 4 or 5 times, but I don't see the word healthcare.
Yeah, we've talked about healthcare.
Okay.
We talk about healthcare every Friday. We have an open forum on our show, similar to
Okay,
yours,
I'm just looking at. I just asked you.
People call up for 3 hours.
Fair enough. I was just asking you if I could judge by your YouTube videos, and you don't have a YouTube video with the word healthcare in it. Now, look, you do your show.
Maybe we call it something else.
Right. Okay, but you
maybe we call it something else, like Obamacare.
Well, I don't see.
We call it Affordable Care. Oh man, Are you trying to say I haven't slammed Trump about his horrible act?
No.
Yeah, because that's fair.
I'm just saying. Tim. All I'm saying is, you do your show, I do my show. The idea that I'm not slamming Rachel Maddow, it doesn't make sense to me to do that because I don't do. Would I program my show like she does, where I would do all this Russia stuff? No, and I don't. But does it hurt my agenda that she's doing that? I don't think so.
It doesn't help. It doesn't help.
But it's not her responsibility to help with my agenda. And it's not.
I'm not even sure what your agenda is. I'm talking about it doesn't help the masses of people out there who want things to change.
Well, but wait a second. Now, wait a second. If Russia peels off 3 votes from Donald Trump, let's just say theoretically, would you from the Senate passing the health care and repeal, would you be for it or against it?
Would I be for or
Would you be for somebody scaring Rob Portman, Susan Collins, and Lisa Murkowski that you are going to vote for a health plan called Trump Care, a guy who could be, I don't know, make it up. He could be a Manchurian Russian candidate, and they get scared by that and they don't vote for it. Would you be in favor of that tactic?
I get your point. And you know what? I get what you say. A win is a win, no matter how you get it. I get it. Because it's for the issue that because you want health care for these 23 million people who might lose it. I get that, man. But that doesn't mean that we throw in with the BS. It doesn't mean
I'm not throwing in with the BS.
Like,
can you
know
point
what
to
I'm saying?
anything?
That's my point.
I agree with that. But I mean, can you point to anything that I've done on this program that that in any way does? I mean, look, I happen to think that Donald Trump is a criminal. I happen to think that he's done criminal things, and he's very worried about this investigation. And I happen to think that Mueller knows it, and that's why he's gotten the team that he's assembled there. I've talked to people who know guys like Weissman, the guy that they brought on, who worked on Enron and worked on the Chin Gigante guy. And look, I think that Donald Trump is very nervous about it, and it's definitely inhibiting his agenda in that White House. And so I'm for it, but I'm not out here saying that he's a Manchurian candidate for Russia. I've said explicitly, I think the collusion
thing. But they are,
thing,
though. That's
okay,
what I'm saying. You said that you address it as they come up.
But Tim,
and daily they're doing this. And since you pointed out what's on my channel, let me ask you: did you talk about election fraud during the primary? Did you talk about election rigging during the primary? I'm not looking at your channel.
Election rigging? What do you mean by that?
Election rigging. We're talking about the disparities in the voting, in the polling, the exit polling based
yes,
versus.
I said that I thought that was bull crap. I did talk about it.
You covered the DNC fraud lawsuit as well, because we talked about.
No, and I've to the extent that I've talked about the DNC fraud lawsuit, I think that's silly. I've been very explicit about that. Yes, I have covered it, just not the way that you want me to. I have a different opinion of it than you.
You just said that you recognize that there were some irregularities in our 2016 primary race.
No,
and now you say the fraud lawsuit.
No, I didn't. I said I covered it, and I said the idea of using those exit polls and measuring against it, I thought was bunk.
We do that for all elections. When we certify elections across the globe, we look at exit polling to determine if there was a fair election and say, in the Congo, for instance. So that's the same metric that we use when we look at other countries and determine if they're actually having, fair elections. So it's just applying the same measures that we use to our own process. But we all know. I mean, so I take.
Yeah, I looked into it at the time. I mean, look, I got news for you. In 2015, I was on cable television saying that the DNC had rigged the not rigged is not the word I would use. Had scheduled the debates when O'Malley was making a bigger issue out of it than Bernie was, if you'll recall, when the schedule came out. That it was obviously done to help Hillary Clinton and to hurt Bernie. I didn't think it was an effective thing, and I thought it would hurt the Democrats long term. But I have no problem saying that when I think it's the case. I don't think there was election fraud with Bernie Sanders. I don't believe that's the case. I don't.
Wow. Did you read WikiLeaks at all?
Yes, I did read WikiLeaks.
Because it's their own emails. It's their own emails stating.
Yeah, I saw those emails, and I don't think that they. Yeah. I don't think that in March the idea that they were against him. Do I think they were against him? Yes. Do I think that rigged the election? No.
Wow. Okay.
So I've covered it. I just haven't covered it the way that you think I should. And you think that makes me a different species in terms of like liberal, progressive. Those are just made up terms that you've decided what they mean.
Well, if we don't.
I would say, I don't know what your politics are, but I am perfectly comfortable that on a spectrum of what are actual politics, rather than, whether I'm on team, this YouTuber or that, daytime cable host. I don't care.
Well, yeah, I'm not, and I'm not attacking whether you do or don't care. What I'm saying is, if this is okay, so we don't know each other well enough to really, to have this conversation without a little bit of context. But I'll tell you, I feel this is what I feel. I feel that if we do not right the ship with the Democratic Party, they're not going to win anything in 2018 or 2020. And I think the only way that you can do that is you have to address the corruption within the. First, you have to acknowledge that there's corruption and that there is deep-seated status quo establishment politics being played. Look at Tom Perez. I mean, Tom Perez was out grilling, and they said, "Hey, come run," because
will you distinguish for
Keith
me?
Ellison because he listen. You know, because come on, you know, Tom. You know, they called Tom up while he was grilling and said, "Come on in, let's run. We need you to beat Keith Ellison because the party. We don't want the DNC chief being too progressive."
Right.
I mean, that's what happened. We have to address these issues.
Well, listen,
if we give a pass to mainstream
Tim,
media,
you say
then
corruption.
to do that, Sam.
You say corruption, and then you tell me that a candidate was recruited by a certain group in the Democratic Party, those who have been in charge of the Democratic Party or have had the most power in the Democratic Party, and they went for an election, and Ellison, who was my favored candidate in that race, lost. Is that corrupt?
He didn't just lose, brother. He didn't just lose. They went and got a guy to beat him. He was the front
What do you mean
runner,
they went and got a guy to beat him? That's what you do in political races.
Tom Perez wasn't even thinking about running.
I understand,
Tim. In the race.
But that's what happens in political races.
Tom Perez,
Listen.
They smear Keith Ellison.
Do you have a problem with Draft Bernie, with the Draft Bernie group?
No, I don't have a problem with it.
You know what they're doing, though, right? You know what they're doing? They're trying to convince Bernie to run for president.
Yeah.
And do you have a problem with that?
And if he doesn't run, no, I don't have a problem with that. I think Bernie's an excellent candidate.
So that's what they did with Tom Perez. Some other forces who have a legitimate. Listen, I fight against them. I wish that Tom Perez didn't run. I wish that Keith Ellison had won. But the idea that he was recruited to run so that the former Obama folks essentially had more of a voice in the future of the Democratic Party, that's not corrupt. That's politics. And it's up to us to advocate for Ellison. And if Ellison doesn't win, then it's up to us to go to the party apparatus and begin slowly to take it over because there's no quick way to take it over. And so that of those 530 delegates who end up being the vast majority of whom are former elected Democrats, it's up to people who want to influence that outcome of those elections to go and take over their local Democratic Party and end up being one of those people.
And that's what we're doing.
Yeah, I'm totally for that.
Absolutely
But that's
agree.
different from saying that it was corrupt that Tom Perez ran. Corruption has a specific meaning.
Tom Perez ran. Okay, so you're right. It's a strong word to use, corruption.
It's the wrong
word.
Let's
call the word, instead of corruption, let's just say it was the establishment behaving as the establishment.
Of course,
destroy, the progressive movement within the party.
Well, to beat the progressive movement. To beat the progressive movement. To beat it. Mm-hmm. And I want to beat the establishment movement.
Well, how can you do that if we're not addressing the corporate Democrats who laid siege to the Democratic Party? And if we don't look,
dude, laid siege. They've been there.
Issues,
there are far less. I mean, 10, 15 years ago, you had, a third of the party were Evan Bayes. Now in the Senate, you have no Evan Bayes. You have no Conrads. You have no Bacchus.
Okay. Are we going to allow the Democratic Party to continue to blame progressives for the loss of Hillary Clinton? And where do you sit on that?
I don't know who does that in the Democratic Party. I think there are people who are frustrated it's still being litigated.
That's the whole point.
Who does? Joy Ray does?
Yeah, I mean, Chris Hayes hit piece, Susan Sarandon. It's all her fault. That
no, wait a second.
Back Hillary,
I think
we had Hillary.
All right, listen,
like that whole
hold on. No, wait a second. Susan Sarandon went on Chris Hayes' program and said there are some people who think that that if Donald Trump wins, it would be a better situation and it would bring about the revolution.
Could be a revolution.
Now
People
listen,
are saying it.
I don't think.
And that's what's happening.
I know that Chris Hayes.
Is what's happening.
Excuse me?
That's what's
You
happening.
think that Donald Trump is going to bring about the revolution? You think that Donald Trump is?
I know.
You think Donald Trump is doing this?
No. Look at the Million Woman March. Do you think that would have happened under Hillary?
No, it wouldn't have happened under
no
Hillary.
reason to.
It wouldn't have happened under Hillary.
I think that
because those people were Hillary voters.
No, not everybody there was Hillary voters. I know
not everybody, of course not. But listen, the vast majority of them were. And the fact is that, look, I've been through this with Bush, and I suspect that you have too. The bottom line is, dude, it's just going to be about fighting Trump. The revolution's not coming. People are going to be breathing a sigh of relief if the Democrats and John Ossoff wins in the election. That's not the revolution.
Wow.
That's just the Democrats winning.
John Ossoff is a centrist.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You know I know it. Exactly. Exactly.
And with $25 million, it's a toss-up.
Exactly.
No one's enamored.
Exactly.
Right.
And if he wins, what do you think the reaction is going to be by the people who went to that Million Woman March? Do you think it's going to be they're going to be bummed, or do you think they're going to be happy? They're going to be thrilled.
Yeah.
Don't tell me the revolution's coming, man. All we're trying to do is get back to parity. We're trying to get back to parity. Somebody comes here and tells me that electing Donald Trump is going to be a positive for progressives. They're out of their minds.
No. It's just a byproduct. It's just a byproduct of what it will bring. That's all. It's not that it's
hey, dude,
positive.
That ain't happening.
It's just that what will happen. Well, for instance, Sam, you know about the immigration issue. You know it's a big issue. It gets a lot of fire whenever we talk about identity politics. The immigration reform issue comes up, and you saw what Trump tried to do with that. Well, you know as well as I do that Obama deported. He's the deporter in chief. But no one talked about it under Obama's reign.
Well, first of all, we did talk about it. Hey, hold on for a second. Yeah, I understand. But we did.
Yeah, but I don't mean you specifically. It's not. This is not about
I
you.
think. I think, frankly,
corporate media didn't really talk about it.
No,
but
they didn't.
Now that Trump's in office,
you're aware. But there's some fundamental differences. One, you heard people announce that he was going to go back to allowing Dreamers to stay, supposedly. I don't know if that's the case or not. But two, you know that there's been 40% increase in this quarter over Obama's deportations. It is now stated policy of the immigration services that it is a crime just for you to be here without documentation, either overstaying or coming into this country without documents. It is a crime on par with a violent crime that you have committed. And so you've moved up on the list in terms of your ability to be deported. That is a fundamental difference. Now, you may call that identity politics, but I got news for you. That's politics. That's hey, this is fundamentally impacting people's lives. And so there is a significant difference.
And what you're citing is...
and I got news for you.
Of deportations.
Go ahead. Regardless of who comes in and takes over the presidency, okay, to get back to DREAMA and DAPA, you're not going to hear the press talk about it. There's not going to be fundamental change that is going to be brought about because whatever after Donald Trump is going to bring about this new era. It's conceivable that maybe 6 years from now, we will have a more, a Medicare buy-in type of situation. It's possible. Maybe we'll have Medicare for all. Maybe. In the meantime,
we should.
Yeah, I hope so.
And we need Democrats that will actually fight for it. People that will actually fight
for it. And
right?
knock on wood, if we're super lucky, that will happen. But in the meantime, what's going to happen is we're going to have tens of thousands of people die because they have no health care. Tens of thousands.
We got to fight that. Absolutely.
I understand, Tim, but your premise is that Susan Sarandon doesn't deserve criticism for implying that the revolution's going to happen.
Of course she does.
Okay, so why are you telling me that Chris Hayes is in the pocket of whatever he is because he criticized Susan Sarandon? Like, talk about wasting time. Forget the conflicts here. What? Listen, I come from that pedigree.
What I was pointing at
why are we spending time talking about Susan Sarandon?
What I was talking about was the audacity of blame that we've been seeing from these corporate media people who are pointing at Russia and pointing at outliers like Jill Stein only got like 5% of the voters. The reason why Hillary Clinton didn't win the presidency.
Well, first of all, I don't hear many people talking about that anymore. I mean, honestly.
Well, yeah,
if you look for it, you can find it. I'm sure.
It's been a talking point for quite some time.
I got some burning or bust bill.
But I've never heard
to do soon.
I've never heard anybody say that. I mean, look. Jill Stein, mathematically, you could make the argument if every Jill Stein voter in Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania voted for Clinton, I suppose you could make that argument. But I don't think – I think to the extent that there was they hurt the chances of Hillary Clinton winning, it was because they were just going around mouthing right-wing talking points. And propagating shit. Propagating shit, frankly.
Campaign in Michigan and Wisconsin.
Listen, yeah, no, that's true too. I agree. That's true too. There's a half a dozen reasons why she lost, and I would say there's 3 or 4 big ones that were a function of her, and there were 3 or 4 big ones that were not a function of her. But at the end of the day, the people that ostensibly we're fighting for are worse off because of it. They're worse off.
And look, and that's.
And arguing stuff like Seth Rich was somehow assassinated, or even implying it, is so much more detrimental.
Arguing stuff like Seth Rich.
Yeah, is ridiculous. It's ridiculous. That's my opinion.
That sounds like a talking point. I'm glad we're having this conversation.
What do you mean? It's my talking point.
Was it ridiculous when I talked about Philando Castile? Listen. Answer the question. Was it ridiculous when I talked about Philando Castile?
No.
It wasn't. It was a murder, right?
No. It's not because it was a murder. It was a murder that was a function of policing in this country, which has to do with policy, which is also not only now is even more worse off than it would have been under Clinton and it was under Obama, because now we have a DOJ that's basically telling police departments around the country, don't worry, we will never come in and chastise you for this type of behavior. So it's a fundamental change in policing, in policy across the country. There is not one shred of policy involvement in the question of Seth Rich. Not one shred, not one iota. There is only one element of news value in Seth Rich, Tim, and you know it and I know it. And that is the supposed intrigue as to whether or not he was assassinated, because supposedly he may have been the source of John Podesta's emails.
Well, that's a very important point. If we find that out, but we don't know.
Isn't.
We don't know, though.
Yes.
If
there is an assassin creed who go out and take out... Wait a second. I will concede this. If there is an assassin creed that goes out and kills people who have done harm to the Clinton family's fortunes in any fashion and kills them after the fact, yes, I will agree with you. That's an important thing for us to know.
Sam. You trying to get us killed?
Yeah,
that is an important point. But Tim, I don't believe that's the case. And anything beyond that, I think, is just fantastical and either...
Well, I'm not making that case. And I don't know why you're strawmanning me into it.
I'm sorry. Do you not have... I'm looking at your thing right now. Why are you bringing up Seth Rich so much? What is the point that you're trying to come out? Like policing policy in Washington, D.C.? Why are there so many cold cases for people who have muggings that gone bad?
Obama killed him in the knockout game.
What is the policy argument you're trying to make there?
What's the policy argument?
Yeah.
Of Seth Rich? Well, no, it leads to the media. Like, we're just asking questions. I don't see what's wrong with asking questions. Why? Because it's not favorable to the DNC?
What do you mean?
I mean, you already said you didn't talk about the DNC fraud lawsuit. So anything that affects the DNC negatively is against your team, so you don't want to talk about it. Therefore,
I'm not on the DNC team.
It's kooky or something.
No, I'm not on the DNC. What questions are you asking? What questions are you asking about Seth Rich?
Anything gets you a net win on the Democratic side, you feel that's
not the Democratic side.
Even if it is.
What gets me a net win on my
as long as the
what gets me a net
win
is
something positive for Democrats.
Not for Democrats. For my policy issues, for my issues that I am in favor of. I'm against people losing their health insurance. I'm against people being deported. I'm against our rivers being poisoned. I'm against. I'm against.
If that's the case,
I'm against there not being public sector unions. More often than not, on all that stuff, Democrats are a better option than the Republicans. But you tell me, what questions are
And all
you
those
asking
things
about Seth Rich?
But brother, what questions am I? So you want to make this a Seth? You decided that we're going to make this about Seth Rich.
No, but you just said you're just asking questions.
Like the last few things you asked me have been about Seth Rich.
No, I have no answers or counter questions. I'm just curious. You said the reason why you cover that stuff is because we got to ask questions. That's all we're doing. We're just asking questions.
But you have to ask questions.
What questions?
I cover everything in the news. I cover a lot of topics. And of course, I would like to know if there's a link between the DNC and the Seth Rich murder. But that's not all I cover, and you know that. You're looking at my page.
Why don't you wonder if there's a...
And you see...
Why don't you ask if there's a question between the rainstorm we had and a weather control device? I mean, because it's ridiculous. I know it's snarky. I know.
What's that guy's name? I don't know his name. That's hilarious. But if you're concerned, if you're against all those issues that you just listed, which I think are great, you have just as much ammunition to go after Democrats as you do Republicans.
And I do.
You think the Democratic Party is marginally better on a couple of those issues and not make them...
I think marginally and some significantly better.
In line with their BS.
So I think significantly better. I mean, I don't know what marginal constitutes as bad and as critical as I have been for years about Obamacare and about
well, you know,
Obama.
The Democratic Party is not like... You know, for instance, Nancy Pelosi is not for single payer. So you would have just as much fire for Nancy Pelosi being against ensuring more Americans than you would any Republican.
No. Nancy, first of all, Nancy...
She's an impediment to progress when it comes to health care, you know it.
No, she's not right now. She's not because she is not in power.
She's the leader of the party in the... Okay.
She is the leader of the House caucus. She is a great leader. I would not support, frankly, a challenge to her, particularly in this era. She would have sat down. She would have left. Hillary
Look at all
won.
the seats that have been lost under her watch. If she was the manager of a baseball team,
dude,
she'd be out of there.
No,
you gotta give me something.
You're thinking of the general manager. The manager plays with the team that they have on the field. The general manager makes the trades and finds the prospects. That's what you don't understand about what her role is. That's what her role is. You're making a category error there.
Wait, hold on. I think we're losing the thread here. The point with Nancy Pelosi is that right now, the optimal scenario that we all agree on is Medicare for all. There's a major difference between expansion of Medicaid and patient protections versus gut it all and put tens of millions of people off it. That's the argument right now. So they're absolutely not the same thing in the same stakes. That's the point.
And I got news for you. Nancy Pelosi goes, you think Steny Hoyer is going to be better?
She needs to go, brother. She needs to go. We need to back more progressive candidates in order to take her place. Not just her, but many other. Look, she is the. If you looked up term limits in the dictionary, there'd be a picture of Nancy Pelosi. It's time to turn the page. It's time to move forward with our politics. I thought you were on board with that. All the issues that you said you were against, we need right, and I want to support candidates.
No, just you and I have a difference, Tim. I mean, one of our differences are on how we go about it, and putting in having Nancy Pelosi lose to a challenger at this point means that Steny Hoyer becomes the Democratic minority leader, and then if they take the House, the Speaker of the House. Steny Hoyer is so bad that if you think Nancy, you will be pining for the days of Nancy Pelosi.
Can I also just jump in?
Believe me.
Let me just jump in real quick though, just just to be honest.
Who is this?
Open. This is Michael. How you doing, Tim? Sam personally, Sam killed Seth Rich, so that's another reason it's a touchy subject for us.
That's not true. Tim.
Seth Meyers in the house, my man. Seth Meyers. not quite as humorous though. But
you wouldn't think that.
Tim, what do you know about Steny Hoyer?
That was the worst thing you said.
What do you know about Steny Hoyer?
I'm from Maryland, so I know a lot about Steny Hoyer.
Right, he's horrible. So so when you say I want to challenge Nancy Pelosi and I want her out, you realize that what you're saying is, I want Steny Hoyer to be the leader of the Democrats.
I do not, but I cannot
Who would you
justify
prefer,
Nancy
Steny
Pelosi
Hoyer or Nancy Pelosi?
Dude, sometimes you got to take the L. Sometimes you got to take that. We cannot do our politics in a way that is fearful of what we're going to have to deal with. And if we,
Well, you know what? You know who said that to me? You know who the last person I had on this program who said that to me? Was Jimmy Dore. And Jimmy Dore said, when I said to him, hey man, there's a really good chance that the Democrats are not going to be able to filibuster that fifth pick for the Supreme Court, and that Mitch McConnell could very well actually nuke the filibuster. And he told me that I was so fearful I could be worried about the moon falling into Lake Michigan. Well, the moon fell into Lake Michigan within 60 days of Donald Trump winning. And my daughter and your kids, if you have any, are going to be living under that Supreme Court for decades.
Look, Sam, that's not Jimmy's fault. That's not my fault.
I'm not saying it's
not our fault that they
I'm not saying
Hillary.
it's fault.
That's not our fault.
But you know what? You got to take responsibility for what you own. And the fact is that you can't say, I'm going to agitate for Nancy Pelosi to be gone, and it's not my fault if Steny Hoyer goes. I mean, that's like me standing with a hammer over Michael's head and saying, like, I'm going to drop it. I'm responsible for it dropping, but it's not my fault that it lands on his head. Yeah, I'm not gravity. But if I can see what is inevitably going to happen as a result of my actions, then I've got to own that too. Not just my actions. I've got to own what inevitably is going to follow with my actions. Now, did Jimmy Dore make a difference in the election?
Right.
Probably not. But you got to own your tactics as if you do have some control.
Sam, it's like when you pulled the trigger with Seth Rich. You have to own that. I'm sorry.
Do you guys have an audience there? Because Mike keeps playing the same old Seth Rich line. At least get new material, bro.
I know.
You're not the
first person. You're not the first person to say that.
So I'd have to lower my ethics as far as Democrats and as far as candidates that I support in order to save the Democratic Party, who won't even admit that they ran a crappy candidate with a crappy message who stood for crappy policies, later tried to adopt Bernie's policies, and that didn't work, and propped up Trump in order to make this a go because she knew Trump was the only person she had a chance in hell with.
Right.
And when we were calling it, as I was calling it months before the election, that Trump would win the election, no one wanted to listen. But now all of a sudden I'm so influential. But back
I'm not saying that you're so influential.
Do not run Hillary.
Tim,
do not do this.
All I'm saying is that
and now you say it's my responsibility to rescue people like Nancy Pelosi.
No, I'm not saying it's your responsibility. See, Tim, you and I have a fundamentally different perspective on these things. I would stipulate everything you said about Hillary Clinton for the sake of argument, and probably largely because I've argued similar things. And I would still vote for her because she's a better option than Donald Trump.
Well, then where's your compass, my brother? Where's your backbone?
Sam doesn't have a compass.
I don't have a compass or a backbone because I'm not hiking and I'm not lifting anything.
Yeah,
I'm talking about politics.
He's a nebbish as well.
I'm talking about politics.
That's new material, Tim.
I'm not worried about how it reflects on me. I'm worried about how politics impacts society. So I don't worry about how it makes me feel about me, Tim. I don't care about that.
Well, I'm not talking about it in a selfish way, but of course you got to have your own. There's some lines you won't cross because you got to look yourself in the mirror.
There are certain things I won't do, but voting for a candidate who's better than another candidate in terms of how it's going to impact millions of people, that is not a line that I'm worried about.
And also,
I don't vote. My vote does not impact how I feel about myself. Because that's not what voting's for.
You're in California, so regardless of how you voted, it was going to have the same outcome.
I'm in New York.
It's okay.
Yeah,
okay,
but I'm just talking about.
Well, hopefully you didn't get an absentee ballot because they stopped hundreds of thousands of people from voting in New York.
Yeah, you know who did that, Tim? Tim, you know who did that? Who did that, Tim? You know this, right? Because you've done videos on this and you've looked into this issue. You know who kept 120,000 people from voting in that primary in the Brooklyn and Queens area. You know who did that, right? Who did it?
No, I don't.
Republican election officials, and they were wrong. And I don't think they did it nefariously, but it was Republican election officials.
Republican officials stopped Democrats from voting.
They're the ones.
In the primary.
Those are the ones who screwed up their registrations. Yes, I would encourage you to dig into that story a little deeper. But listen, I appreciate this exchange. Love to do it again. Thank you for calling in, buddy. You want to say one more thing, or?
All right, man.
You want to apologize to me?
Oh yeah. No, I don't want to apologize to you, Mike. You
Fair
give me
enough.
Seth Rich digs all through the show, but I don't have a problem with it, though. But thank you, Sam, for allowing me on and the opportunity to, voice my criticisms and opinions on your show, man. It says a lot about your open door policy, man. I appreciate it.
Well, I appreciate you calling in.
And I did take an opportunity to not make a Seth Rich joke when we were talking about what Sam was capable of, and it was queued up for me. I passed on it.
Yes, Michael gets a cookie today. All right, thanks, man. I
Duly
appreciate
noted,
it.
my brother.
Be well.
All right, guys.
All right.
Bye-bye.
All right, that
He's
was
a nice
fun.
guy.
Hi, folks. Sam Seder here. We still need your help on our Patreon page. YouTube ads have come back, but not nearly as much as we had before. So if you can help us out, any little bit helps. Head over to our Patreon page right at this URL, and you'll help us keep helping you by making videos